Hello and welcome to Cosmological Arguments. I'm your host, John Bannan. Is God's existence a question of reason or faith? The answer is it's a question of reason. When I speak of God, I'm referring to the Judeo-Christian understanding of God, the God of the Bible. And the first line of the first book of the Old Testament in the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." That's from the first line of the book of Genesis of the Old Testament. So in the first line of the Bible, we are introduced to God. And we are told God is the creator, essentially, of physical reality, the heavens and the earth. Nothing else existed in the first line of the Bible except the heavens and the earth, which God was creating. So God is the creator of all physical reality. Now, that first line is giving us a reasoned belief that God exists. And the reason is because the creation of physical reality, the creation of heaven and earth, requires a creator. So the God of the Bible, the Judeo-Christian God, is a reasoned God, the creator God, necessary for physical reality to exist. So right off the bat, the Bible gives you a reason why you should believe in God. And the reason is because God is necessary for physical reality to exist. Now, the cosmological arguments give good reason to believe in God through circumstantial evidence presented by the observed behavior of the cosmos, which implies the necessity of an uncaused metaphysical cause of physical reality, which we call God. Now, this idea of the uncaused cause goes back to the famous Greek philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle lived from 385 BC to 323 BC. This was centuries before Jesus lived. And Aristotle, in his famous work called The Metaphysics, describes the unmoved mover as God. So Aristotle presents this reasoned argument for the existence of God, which he calls the unmoved mover. This is encapsulated in the cosmological argument called the prime mover argument, which was made famous really by St. Thomas Aquinas. And St. Thomas Aquinas adopted a great deal of Aristotle's metaphysics in terms of Christian philosophy. So, even before Jesus existed, the existence of God was being reasoned by Greek philosophers. Greek philosophers such as the atomists. Proposed the existence of a first uncaused cause. So the point is this idea of the cosmological arguments proving the existence of what we call God has been around for thousands of years. It predates the existence or the historical Jesus. So this question of does God exist has traditionally for thousands of years been considered a question of reason, not a question of faith. Even in the New Testament, St. Paul in Romans chapter 1, verse 20 said, ever since God created the world, his everlasting power and deity, however invisible, have been there for the mind to see in the things he has made. So here you have St. Paul essentially making a cosmological argument for the existence of God, saying that physical reality proves that it must have a creator, even though that creator is invisible, and that creator we call God. So this is really St. Paul's version of the first cause argument, another argument made by St. Thomas Aquinas. So again, even early Christians, including the Apostle St. Paul, thought of God in terms of a reasoned divine entity or nature or being, not something that you need faith to believe in. Now, in the New Testament, Jesus doesn't address the question, does God exist? Jesus doesn't address the question of atheism. It wasn't a concern of his to convince people that God existed. Jesus' concern was convincing people that he was sent by God, that he was the Son of God. And that would be a faith-based belief. But many Christians confuse that with the general question of does God exist, which is a reasoned belief, not a faith-based belief. In fact, in the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 29 to 30, it said, Jesus answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." So there Jesus is saying, have faith that I was sent by God. So that's where this whole idea of the necessity of faith in Christianity comes from. It's the idea that you need faith to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That's an entirely different question than whether God exists. So don't confuse those two things. the idea that God, the existence of God, is a faith-based question leads to an obvious conundrum, which is you can apply that sort of faith-based belief to any creator God whatsoever. So whether that creator God is the Judeo-Christian God, who we call the Father or Yahweh or Allah, or a pagan God, creator God, such as Zeus or Brahma or Odin or Shiva or Amun. If it's a faith-based belief, you can make that argument for all those fake, pagan, non-existent creator gods as well. What's the difference between saying you must have faith that Yahweh exists and saying that you must have faith that Brahma exists? Who has the better argument if you're just using faith alone as your justification for the belief in a creator God? And the answer is neither. The arguments are identical. So why would you believe in Yahweh versus Brahma? There's no discernible reason why one would be better than the other in a purely faith-based argument. So that sort of faith-based argument for the existence of God isn't helpful at all, and it doesn't lead you in the direction of the Judeo-Christian God versus any other pagan deity. Only a reasoned argument for the existence of the Judeo-Christian God is useful in proving why you should believe in the Judeo-Christian God and not these other fake pagan gods. So, ultimately, because the question of whether God exists is a question of reason, it is permissible to question God's existence. You cannot reason to God's existence if you cannot question God's existence. Many Christians think you shouldn't question God's existence, but that is false. And it is based on an incorrect belief that God's existence is a question of faith. It is not a question of faith. It is a reasoned question. It is perfectly acceptable for a Christian or a person who believes in God to question God's existence, because you have to in order to give reasons, good reason, why you believe in God and that God exists. You can't have one without the other. You can't have good reason for why God exists without being willing to question God's existence. The two they go hand in hand. So there's nothing wrong with questioning the existence of God, and the cosmological arguments give you good reason through circumstantial evidence to believe that God exists. Okay, I hope you learned something, and take care.